Oh,
on the live feed.
uh-oh. Oh, oh yeah.
You're, you're here too.
Hello, hello, everyone. I am so excited that you guys are here. My name is Guylaine Bell. I am the founder and president of Rest Counseling Consulting. This has been a long time in the making. However, we are here and we had a lot of hard work to make this possible for you, but you guys are going to have a treat today. We have a slew of panelists here that's going to be talking about mental health as well as COVID-19, how that has impacted you guys, impacted all of us. And then we're also going to take a break in about an hour, and then from there we will continue going on. We also have two panelists virtually. We're going to introduce the panelists, and then we'll go from there. Okay, and also this right here is my co-host. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself, and then we'll go back and introduce me as far as what I do. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shelly Fan. I am a Florida State licensed psychotherapist, CEO, and owner of Ask Shelly Consulting, which is an emotional intelligence firm that works with corporations to bring them to peak performance. My practice provides an array of psychotherapeutic interventions to individuals, families, married couples, and I also host a show every Tuesday at 12 where I give individuals an opportunity to ask their most difficult questions and I provide feedback for them. It is an honor to be here anytime we have an opportunity to spread awareness as it results to mental health, which is a fundamental factor for any form of success or wealth. I am there. And one of the things that is key for today's presentation is the idea that challenges always expose. So we are in the midst of a pandemic. That's a challenge. Challenges will always expose opportunities. Challenges will always expose our strengths, and challenges will almost always expose our unresolved injury. And that is what today is about.
Awesome. Very well put, Shelly. Thank you for that. Okay. So I'm also a psychotherapist. I have my practice here in the great Orlando, Florida. I've been practicing since 2008. And my private practice has been open for approximately 3 years. So I'm very excited about that. And thank you again so much for joining us. Tell a friend, tell a family member to get on, because I'm telling you, you are in for definitely a treat, okay? So I'm gonna go around and have the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll go from there, start talking about the topics, okay? I'm gonna start with Miss Abby. Go ahead.
Hi there, my name is Abby Foster. I am a very new addition to Rest Counseling and Consulting. I recently relocated down here from the Northeast, and I've been with Rest for, 2 months, I think? So my background is in art therapy, and I truly enjoy holistic psychology. I feel like there's a lot to be said about the mind-body connection. It's all working together.
And spirit.
Don't forget the spirit.
Don't forget that, you guys. Thank you for that, Abby. Dr. Bonhomme.
Good evening, greeting. My name is Dr. Idle Bonhomme. I'm a physical therapist, manage physical therapy and balance centers. Consider myself your body mechanic, where to keep you on your feet, keep you moving. Also have the pleasure of serving as the president for the Greater Haitian American Chamber of Commerce. Again, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. Let's get you moving. Let's get physical.
All right. And Ms. McBean.
Hello, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here tonight. Thank you so much for joining in from all these various places that you've come in, those who are in the building, those who are on Zoom and Facebook, social media. My name is Tiffany McBean, and I'm a high school teacher. I'm a pastor and author. I have 2 teenage boys, and I'm married to a wonderful husband, Dale McBean, founder of Fountain of Truth International Ministries.
Thank you, Ms. McBean. And Ms. Mayweather.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vernisha Mayweather Sprov. I know my husband's probably watching. So Mrs. Sprov, but many know me by Attorney Mayweather. I am the owner of the law office of V. Mayweather PLLC. I focus on Social Security, disability, family law, and landlord-tenant. I look forward to speaking today.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And we also have one more person. Oh, actually, no. Let me go ahead and start with a virtual. I'm so sorry. I almost forgot about you guys. Virtually, we'll start with Josh.
Florida. My wife and I, we also have a relationship and life coaching business. And so, as it was said earlier, challenges does expose opportunities, and we're blessed with the opportunity to be able to do what we wanted to do and help people. And, especially for me, I had my own battle with just anxieties and disorders in the past. And so being able to use past challenges to help people in the present is something I love doing. So I'm excited about today, and I hope everyone can leave with something that they can use and apply to help them in these unprecedented times.
Thank you, Josh. Dr. Jones.
I think you're on mute, Dr. Jones.
I'm sorry, I was muted. You always have to say that on Zoom at some point, so I did it. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Candace Jones, Orlando pediatrician, and I just want to thank everyone for being here today to talk about a very important topic of mental health, coping skills, building resilience. Wonderful topics, and I know you're going to learn a lot of things that will help you in your life and your family and your kids. Again, thank you, Rest Counseling, for putting this on, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. And we have one more individual, Lorvins Eugene. 1 second, please. Mike.
Oh, my name is Lorvins Eugene. I'm the owner of Pillars Cleaning. I'm a child advocate as well as a small business owner. I'm psyched about being here. Sorry about running late. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Eugene. Okay. All right. So let's talk about mental health. What is mental health? Okay. I know for those of you guys who are watching us, you guys probably have some stigma associated with mental health, or you probably have individuals that are getting some kind of help when it comes to mental health, or they're seeking professional help, or you probably want to seek professional help, but yet because of the stigmas, it prevents you from going. So let's talk about what is mental health and what is a mental health disorder. So Shelley, what do you think mental health is?
Well, I can tell you what most people think it is. I think that when people hear mental health, they automatically assume mental illness. And what does that look like? That might look like the man in the parking lot at 7-Eleven who's speaking to himself and responding to internal stimuli, and we call that crazy. But mental illness, mental health is a spectrum. And on this spectrum, many of us fall. And it can go all the way to severe and persistent mental illness when we're talking about psychosis, hearing things, seeing things, feeling things, having these thought processes that are not necessarily logical. It can be extreme, but it can also be on the lower end of the spectrum where we normalize things that are abnormal. And so I think when we're talking about awareness, not only are we talking about the obvious, but it's important to talk about the things that we normalize. For example, your inability to maintain 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep is an issue. Your inability to turn your thought process off in the evening is an issue. Your behavioral patterns that continue to attract outcomes to your life that are undesired is an issue. Your inability to commit is an issue. Your ability to make sound decisions that fall in line with your values and your morals and your standards, those are issues. And so we tend to count ourselves out of this spectrum, but many of us experience emotional challenges in ways that we normalize. However, it's important that we still get the help that we need to overcome and take dominion over our emotions.
Thank you for that. And it's also the way you guys respond to stressors, as Shelley was also saying. You know, you have COVID-19, for example. You have things that's happening politically. You have financial issues. You have all these issues, and you have all these stressors. And it's the ability, mental health, it's the ability for you to be able to process correctly, is for you to be able to cope correctly with the situation. Now, it becomes, as she was talking about the spectrum, it becomes a disorder when it's just like too much. You're not able to have a day-to-day or normal day, right? And you're having issues. And so then therefore you have to seek professional help to get help. And then so therefore, when it comes to mental health, Shelley, what are some of the stigmas you think, you know, people are probably dealing with that's keeping them from getting the help that they need?
The stigma is that mental health means that you're crazy, that having mental health challenges means that you are weak, that mental health challenges means that you have done something wrong, and then it causes guilt, it causes shame. When you get to a point where you recognize that there's an issue, there's a level of vulnerability that many of us don't want to step into. We live in a society where vulnerability is not safe. And so these are all stigmas, even just the resources that are available to address mental health. There's stigmas there that I'm not going to pay someone to give me advice. Well, I don't know about you or you, but I don't get paid to give anybody advice. What I do is I provide evidence-based interventions that will set you free. That's different. I have student loans I'm still paying, Jesus. That proves that I don't provide advice, okay? And so those are some of the stigmas that, you know, I'm going to be labeled, I'm going to be given medication, I'm going to be hospitalized, or, you know, I'm going to be exposed. These are all the stigmas that are associated with mental health that causes people to not get the help that they need and the help that they deserve.
Right, right. And if anybody watching right now, if you guys have any comment, just let us know. What do you guys think about mental health? And when it comes to a mental disorder, you could actually have a mental disorder, and for you to be categorized to say you have a mental disorder, you would have to go to a professional. You would have to meet a criteria in order for them to say, okay, this is a disorder. Just like, for example, if you have high blood pressure, okay? So it might be genetic, right? However, you probably did not exhibit the high blood pressure until you're doing something that probably you're not taking care of yourself right, and then it comes about, right? So you have to go to a doctor, they diagnose you, say, okay, you have high blood pressure. But someone with high blood pressure could actually be healthy. Maybe I need to ask Dr. Jones about that. But with mental health, a disorder, a mental health disorder, you may have a mental health disorder, you may be healthy. You may be diagnosed with depression, for example, and you may be mentally healthy. Why? Because you're actually seeking the help, you're getting the intervention, the prevention, you're getting the medication, you're doing everything you need to do for you to be mentally healthy. Now, someone could be not mentally healthy and yet do not have a disorder. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and when you were talking, it reminded me of another major stigma. I may have said it, but just in case I didn't, this idea that I'm going to be labeled and somehow this label is not going to allow me to achieve gainful employment, or this label is going to disqualify me from, you know, relationships or living some type of healthy life. And we have to understand that, first and foremost, if there is a label, if someone meets criteria for a disorder, I know for me, my life goal is to take dominion, and to take dominion over my emotions as well. And I want to know what it is, that thing, that barrier is called. I want to know what that obstacle is called. I want to know what that barrier is called. So sometimes it's important to understand that that thing has a name, and I need to know what that is and become an expert so I can overcome it. We can't overcome the things that we do not know. And so do not be afraid of the label, but we have to also understand that sometimes there are challenges that don't necessarily have a label or meets
Absolutely.
criteria for a disorder. You may be going through a period of grief. You may be going through depression that's not necessarily at a place where it requires a diagnosis. And so again, it's nothing to fear to get the help that you need.
Absolutely, very well said. All right, so we're going to go to our panelists and we're going to ask them some questions and see what they think, okay? So I'm going to start off with Abby. Abby, what mental health effects are being seen in the general population due to COVID, do you think?
So studies are showing the CDC, the World Health Organization, all kinds of studies are showing a dramatic increase in anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, substance use. The numbers that have most recently come out are showing that over the year 2020, they increased by like threefold. So it's really showing that the effects of the past year are very dramatic for the entire population, you know, that it's not just one area of the population that is really being affected, but no matter who you are, where you come from, how old you are, it's showing that it's very dramatic.
Absolutely. You know what I say? I say I'm going to go ahead and create my own diagnosis with this COVID thing. I'm so sick and tired of it, okay? So I want to call it, what is it? COVID fatigue syndrome.
I like that.
And that's one of the things that they're really seeing is that something like fatigue and trauma has a buildup effect on you. And so this thing that is happening in the world that you can't necessarily see it, you can't necessarily really control it or do anything about it other than taking the safety precautions, but that weighs on your brain. And the way that the brain processes things like that, like the way that we were built mentally and physically, is that, like, say, a bear was gonna attack you, you would go, right? And you would have a startle effect. And so that affects both your brain and your body. These things that are happening, even though we can't see them, they still have that same effect. And so it builds up and adds to the anxiety, depression, all of those increases in mental illness.
I heard the other day, that we're not going to see the true impact of COVID. We'll see the true impact in about another decade, where we're going to see the true effect of the learning gap because of the things that the children are not absorbing during these 2 years, hopefully 2, praise Jesus, please just 2, no more, right? And that we're gonna see the true impact 10 years from now because of that buildup that you were talking about. Because what happens when that bear comes out and you have this startle effect is that your body responds by releasing stress hormones, and those stress hormones impact your heart, your bones. It creates brain damage to the outer cortex of your brain. And so it's like, if it's not one thing, it's something else. It's not pandemic, it's politics. If it's not politics, it's just been on and on and on. And most of us have persevered. However, the impact, especially for those who are not being preventive, who are not being intentional about staying well, that we will truly see the impact 10 years from now when we're having all of these chronic medical conditions pop up and chronic illnesses and emotional challenges as a result of what we're not doing right now for ourselves to stay well.
Absolutely, I agree.
Exactly, and they say the body takes count. It remembers the things that you're going through. So all the stressors and the buildup of issues over a period of time, it really weakens the immune system. I see a lot happening in the classroom with students who are depressed and anxious. And it is not unusual to get lots of emails saying that students are in the hospital for anxiety. And so we have to know, what are we going to do to help support parents and schools and these students? Right now in the classroom, they are preparing teachers, training teachers to do social emotional learning, and that training started last year. But it is good to know that we have our psychotherapists or psychologists, we have talk therapy, we have medication, we have so many ways that students can get the support they need in the right community.
Thank you for that. Anybody else in the panelists want to add on to that?
I'll just clarify, so everything you guys have stated in terms of the emotional, mental impact, as a physical therapist, we see it manifest somatically, meaning body pain. So it has to develop or find a channel to expose, to manifest, to release. So if you're not able to verbally or find a channel to talk it out, or someone to help you identify it in label, as mentioned earlier, and if you're not physically active, the symptoms will manifest themselves through your body, whether it be headaches, body pain, chest pain, digestional issues. And you may not be able to relate that to it until you begin to recount the effects when it started, when you meet with a professional and help you identify when the symptoms started. So as a result, finding someone to talk to, it's not a stigma, but allow yourself to identify that channel to help you get through the situation.
Awesome. I definitely agree with that. Thank you. So with you guys, how have, anybody in the panelists, how have you guys actually been coping with everything that's been going on, with COVID, with racial tension, with politics, with financial barriers maybe, with being stressed and isolated at home, right? And if you
from home.
teaching from home, and if you're married, of course, you know what that's like, right? So, and kids, you know, so how have you guys been dealing with that? You know, I want you guys to go ahead and share with the audience and let them know, because sometimes they may think that, you know, they're suffering on their own. Nobody else is going through what they're going through. And on the other side, it's not true, because all of us seem to be going through something, right? And it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay for you guys to seek help and not stay silent. It becomes not okay when you do stay silent, and then it becomes a problem, like Dr. Bonhomme was saying. You start feeling physical issues, and then you're wondering, why am I feeling this way? And you don't realize it could probably be your mental health. So how have you guys been coping? Maybe Lorvins, you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I tend to stay kind of busy. I don't sit around too much. If I have an issue, I tend to keep myself busy. It's always something to do. I think COVID, I think it's manifested itself in a number of ways, right? So you have the part where, like you guys mentioned, the mental health piece. You can't just walk into certain places and say, hey, I've got a problem. Hey, can I see someone? I prefer to walk in as opposed to calling in. A lot of people are at home now. They're taking calls. And for instance, I was helping a friend set up a business the other day, and we called Tallahassee. They put him in the queue. He's been in the queue for quite some time now, right? So, but if you guys recall, if you had an issue before and you called Tallahassee, it's maybe a 24-hour turnaround and you get some attention. And so imagine some of these kids that see, you know, mental health as a, if you will, like a negative thing, right? They don't want to walk into a situation where you're doing telehealth. Hey, I'm having suicidal ideation, or whatever, however that manifests itself. No one's going to go do that. So I wonder, not to just kick it back on you guys and put pressure on you, but can we expound on some of the protection that people have in terms of being labeled a certain way or having a mental health condition? I know, Ghislaine, you mentioned people thinking that they're going to be, it's going to cost them a job. I think it might have been you. I'm sorry. Can we expound on some of the protection regarding HIPAA and how some people can maybe open up a little more, especially with COVID being the way it is?
Sure. So there are legalities that surround the confidentiality of a person. And so those laws protect the health information for a person that is receiving services. And so that is name, age, any identifying demographic, you know, it's all protected. Your diagnosis is protected. Interventions are protected. Anything that has to do with the treatment plan interventions, anything to do with you is protected. Now, there are limitations to those protections. For example, if a person discloses to a provider that they have a desire to hurt themselves or to hurt someone else, then as providers, we are mandated reporters, and we have a duty to protect the community. So we can breach confidentiality to protect a person or someone else or the community at large. Another limitation to that is if during session someone discloses that there is a vulnerable adult or child that's at imminent risk of harm or imminent risk of exploitation or neglect that would cause harm, we have a duty to protect and to get protective services involved to assist that child or vulnerable adult. And then the last is if there's any type of court involvement and a provider is subpoenaed to release records on a person, those are the limitations surrounding confidentiality. For the most part, though, it is, not for the most part, completely, it is a safe intervention that is designed to set you free. And I want to repeat that we all deserve to be free, to be operating in dominion, to enhance our emotional intelligence so we're living a life that attracts the outcomes that we desire.
Thank you for that.
If I can just chime in on that
ahead.
as well. I think that, you know, what Lorvin's, how you were asking about what types of protections can you give people in, okay, are they going to be diagnosed? What kind of label might that become? Right. I think that personally, as much as, you know, you have to provide a diagnosis, I try to reinforce with my clients that just because this is what we are calling it, this is not what you are. These are the symptoms that you have, and these are the steps that can be taken to address what it is that you're feeling, but you are not the mental illness. So
I'm so happy you said that, because when people, usually when I'll ask people, tell me a little bit about yourself, right? And then that's weird because they're coming, I don't know if they expect to lay down on a couch, or I'm not sure what they're expecting, but tell me a little bit about yourself, and they'll start off with, I'm bipolar. I'm like, really? Does it literally says that on your birth certificate? Mom called you bipolar? You know, we become the disorder, so I'm so happy that you said that. I think we skipped another protection, ADA. Does anybody want to talk about that? The Disabilities Act that kind of protects people who do get labels for where they can't lose their jobs. I'm not a big ADA expert. Is there anyone that has that expertise and wants to talk about that a little bit?
I mean, I'm the attorney on the panel, but what I will say is I don't know all, but what I can say is that there are protections.
Yeah.
And if there is an issue that deals with employment, then I would advise one to go to an employment lawyer to find out what those protections are. To piggyback off of, y'all have said so many things. My mind is over here. I'm trying to internalize all this. But we were talking about the coping mechanisms, how this has affected people. What I can say is COVID has made me slow down to understand the why to the what I do. And I also, because I told you I do Social Security disability. So the clients that come to me, they are seeking disability benefits because they are no longer able to work due to some impairment. And what I ask them is, why do you think you're disabled? And they say, because I have anxiety. Well, how do you know that? I need you to break down the why to the what you do. And we often walk around not understanding what we do and why we do it. So with that said, like I said, COVID has slowed people down and brought about a stillness. And that's another thing that I've realized. A lot of people are afraid of being still. Because in stillness, you have to deal with what you've been attempting to avoid. And what you said something about you can't address what you don't know. I would also say you can't address what you avoid. You may know it, but you are avoiding it. You're overworking. You know, like, if I slow down, Jesus. if I slow down, the thing that I have been avoiding, I have to deal with. For me, I have my own practice. I'm constantly helping people, and there's an expectation that I appear to be strong. I am strong, but I also have needs. I also have issues that I deal with. I also need coping mechanisms. I also have to go to people to speak to them about the things that I'm going through. So that's another thing that I want to touch on, is that COVID has made me evaluate my circle. Like, I need to be able to go to people who can give me the real, who knows Vernisha, not Vernisha as a lawyer, because that's what I do, that's not who I am.
That's right.
They know what I'm dealing with. I can be vulnerable. Y'all, listen here now. Look, I gotta say this. Before I got up here, I was telling her, I was like, I'm so nervous. Ooh, COVID has brought me out of my shell.
That's good.
So in what we're going through, I want people to understand that we're all dealing with something, but there's always a yin and a yang. There's always good and bad, and it's how you choose to view it. When it comes to mental health, and I just got to say this really quickly, and this is the first time I will actually say it to this many people, but I started doing Social Security disability because my grandmother had a mental illness that never went treated. And I saw how it affected not only the family, the friends, but her. Like, if she could have had a safe space to talk about what she was going through, if she could have gotten treatment, and ooh, hold on, Pastor, this is gonna be for you too. If my grandfather was a minister, and so in that there was a conflict between trusting God, executing your faith, and the works. I think he focused more on the works, the faith, but was not really doing the works. Like, faith without works is dead. So, okay, I'm done. Y'all, I can go on. Listen, I can go on. I realize this is a touchy subject for me. Like, I just want people to know that you are not alone. Like, there are people who are trained to give you guidance as to how to cope, as to how to address what you're going through. And there are people who care about you.
What do you guys think, also, the virtual, we don't want to miss our virtual people, so we are going to go ahead and ask them. But as
Sure.
a professional, even Dr. Jones, you as a doctor, do you feel like that you are in a place of vulnerability at times if you would need mental health for you to actually go seek it out, or maybe the people that's in your circle or your colleague or people that you know who are professionals who are first line defense, is it, I guess, the stigma behind it, does it keep them from actually going because they may appear that they're weak?
Yes, that's a great question. And as you guys know, I'm a pediatrician, so I, deal with family. And so you definitely can see varying degrees of mental health concerns with parents, with grandparents, and that spill over into children as well. And definitely all the things you guys have touched on are all issues and could be a panel in and of themselves for 2 hours. And so it's hard to pick up to where to go with this. But I would say it is definitely a concern that we need to continue to raise awareness around, trying to break down those layers of stigma that keep families bound. Because as a parent or a grandparent or the authority figure in your family household, if you are not taking care of yourself, you are limited in what you can give to your children, and limited in how you can help your children. We know all of this trauma, all of this pathology can pass down through generations. And we have to start to break these cycles, break these chains, as they say. And it starts with us acknowledging that something is wrong. And I say this all the time to families. and parents and with their children. It's okay to know what's going on with you, to acknowledge that, and to work with someone that you trust to come up with a plan to address it. And that's how we move forward and make a difference and make things better and succeed in life instead of just spinning our wheels and continuing all of the dysfunction that goes with it. Um, so that's the message that I send to my families. And I try to help them to see that there is no benefit of feeling shame or stigma around mental health illness. If I tell your child they have asthma, they accept it. You know, for the most part, that is a medical diagnosis. That is a medical condition. So is depression. So is anxiety. So is ADHD. And so you should accept all of those words, you know, if it has been properly diagnosed, just as if you would take diabetes or high blood pressure or asthma or eczema of the skin, and know that there is treatment, there's a plan to be made, and there is work to be done. And so that's just what I try to get them to see.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones.
Yes.
Also, I know Miss Mayweather was talking about, I guess, her loved one. I think it was her grandmother, and she talked about going to the church. We have actually two pastors here, so we're going to actually ask them questions pertaining to that, as far as like the mental health and, you know, church and the stigma with mental health. So maybe Pastor Josh, you could expound on that for us.
Mhm. Yes, sure. You know, I think everyone touched on really good points. You know, just what Vernisha said about just having what COVID has taught us to do is to really slow down, but then also to analyze our circles. So it's basically having a trusted source, someone you can trust and be open with. What I found in ministry is that being vulnerable, it really opens the door for people to be open to you. Sometimes, and what I frown upon, especially in ministry. So as Bernicia say, you know, she is a lawyer, but then she also, you know, she's strong, but then there's times where she needs to be strengthened. And I feel like in the church sometimes, you know, people are afraid to open their mouths because they're afraid that they're going to be judged as far as according to their faith or lack thereof. And the truth be told is that all of our faiths are challenged at times, especially in COVID. And so just being able to be a trusted source where someone can come and be vulnerable with. I actually opened up the door a lot and talk about what happened to me 12 years ago. 12 years ago, I was a young father. I was a newlywed husband. I was in school full time pursuing my degree, which also had accompanied with rotation hours I had to do. Plus, I was working full time. And the thing I feel with just mental health illness is that it can slowly creep up on you, and then you don't realize how much pressure you're under until it manifests into a life-changing event. For me, it was until I ended up in the hospital, and I'm like, wow, I didn't realize all of this was happening in my life. And then and with that being someone in ministry, I can judge my own faith and say, wow, where do I stand? You know, I'm supposed to be a man of God, but it's being transparent and open, because I always believe your body will whisper until it yells. You know, your body will give you some indications that something is going on internally, and we have to be in tune with what's going on. Not just in tune, but to have someone to say, this is what's going on in my life, and not be in fear that my faith is going to be judged. And so, you know, I feel like just the transparency and slowing down and understanding that there will be times. I mean, you can look at people in the Bible, you can look at people, men and women of just who are doing something significant in the world today. Everyone had it challenged. You know, as they say, you have to have a test before a testimony. It has to be a mess before it can become a message. And so, you know, I feel like, as everyone is saying, it's okay to admit and to speak to someone when you feel like you are overwhelmed, because trust me, you're not the only one who is going through. But then also, it's just making sure that it is a trusted source, someone you can go to who's going to help alleviate rather than add to all the things that you're going through in life.
Thank you. I think Ms. McBean wanted to add, or anybody else in the panelists wanted to add. I could give you 1 to 2 minutes to go ahead. And
Thank you very much, Pastor, for reminding us of that, because this is pretty much a global trauma. We're all experiencing this. But the thing is, we wear a mask. We want to hide what we're really feeling from the outsiders because we don't want to present ourselves in a certain way. But know that each of us, we're going through this together, and it is traumatic. Waking up and seeing the death toll rise, that's overwhelming. You might even have lost family members and friends to COVID-19 or some other issue at a time during COVID-19. So we look at this, we have to go to work, we have to minister to our family, we have to do the things, we have to show up in our communities and do what we've been called to do. And the thinking is, where do we turn to for help? You're not getting it at work. A lot of people are not creating a little kumbaya and let's talk about our feelings. That's not happening. But we go to church and we're expecting to get that kind of salve in our services. And is there a stigma sometimes related to this? And are the pastors ready to have that conversation when people come in? And so we always have to think, look, our faith keeps us grounded. Our faith keeps us grounded. For those of us who are believers, Christians, I remember at our church, we created opportunities for people to fellowship by WhatsApp and Zoom and FaceTime. And what we did was create opportunities for that kind of conversation. In my book, It's a New Season, How to Handle Life's Changes, this is a new season. There's so many new normals in the workplace, at the doctor's office, just about everywhere in your homes. If you have family members who are in the health field, they change in the garage before they come in. Everything's different now. So we have to come to this place where we acknowledge this has happened. How do we move forward from here?
Just to piggyback on what Pastor Josh said earlier, that normally there's whispers, the body talks to you, but it's learning how to identify those whispers, recognizing them. For example, we look at inflammation, okay? Or we look at stress. It's not a bad thing, but identifying and understanding what's causing the stress and be able to find a channel to relieve that stress.
I just want to add something really quickly. So in concluding about the circle, a big indicator that people are in need of evaluating their circle is a social media post. If you had a circle that you could confide in, I think it would be less likely that you would post the intimate things that you're going through that affect your mental health on social media. That's it.
I want to also, can you guys hear me okay? I want to circle back to a question that you asked, only because in forums like this, we want to make sure that people transform, that there is change that comes about these efforts. And the more practical we are as panelists, the higher the probability that people will apply the things that they've learned. So I want to go back to a question that was asked, which is, what are you doing to stay well during the pandemic? And so what I'm going to ask each person to do within 45 seconds, just name one specific thing that you have done to stay well during the pandemic. And we will start. That was Pastor Josh.
Right.
Okay.
I also, before Pastor Josh go on, I want to engage those who are watching. Go ahead and put in your comments in the chat box. You know, what have you guys been doing as well? So we want to know, so we want to also share, because you just never know. Maybe your coping mechanism may be a good coping mechanism for somebody else. So do share. Pastor Josh, starting with you.
Sure. One thing I can say for sure is just having someone that you can check in with. You can check in on them, they can check in on you. And it can be someone who's in your household or someone, a family member. For me particularly, it was my wife and I. Just, so we see what's going on and we're absorbing everything. But how often do we take a moment to process it and then talk about what we're feeling on the inside? And so my battle, I just what I went through was about 12 years ago. But my wife this year, there was a lot that happened in our household. So trying to keep to the time, I mean, we went from a 2-income household to a 1-income household because my wife decided she was wanted to keep the kids home and she was going to help them with virtual learning. And so that was a change for her, and it began to impact her to the point where her breathing was infected. So she and we have scheduled times to check in with each other and talk about what's going on and to help each other through. So I feel like checking in, having an accountability partner to talk about what's happening on the inside, that's going to help.
Excellent.
Awesome. I have Nikki French that says that she exercise and walk and jog. Actually, Pastor Josh's wife, who's watching right now, she says that she pray and she works out. I have another person here, Osteen. She says that she journal, meditate, therapy, go girl. And then I also have other people who are saying they do exercise, pedal, I guess bike riding, 10 minutes a day. That's good. And then working out. I guess for me, I could start with me, what I do. Heck, I have my own mental health that I have to deal with, even as a psychotherapist. And I want you guys to understand that just because we are psychotherapists, just because we are professionals, we are doctors, we are lawyers, right? That does not mean we're pastors or whatever you do. That does not mean that you don't have to take care of yourself mentally, okay? So for me, I deal with a lot of clients. I have to keep myself checked so I could help them. So I have to make sure that it starts with me if I'm going to, practice what you preach, is it? So what I do is I garden. I make sure that that's my little spot for serenity. I would just go in my backyard, say hello to my plants, talk to my plants, and I would garden. And that just brings me so much peace where I'm able to clear my mind and so forth. So I encourage you guys to actually find, what help you guys as well. Not only going to a therapist, but also finding something else that help you release. The brain, the mind, it looks for a place to release. Just like if you exercise the body, if you're sweating, it has to release that sweat, right? Anything that actually this body does is looking for a place to release. If you go to the bathroom, release, right? Anything that you do, you need some kind of a release. So the mind, again, mental health, you need that release. The release could be talking to a professional, right? If you don't have a illness, a mental health illness, and you just have to keep your mental health in check, then just do that. So Shelly, what is some things that you do that help you?
Well, traveling is my number one wellness tool. So that has been disrupted, right? And so I have to create a space where I can mentally escape. So staycations are very powerful, and that has helped. And when it got a little bit safer, I did take some risky trips. But that is my wellness tool. On a smaller scale, laughing is very important to me. I find humor in almost absolutely everything. And that can be very uncomfortable during church services. But I can find humor in absolutely everything. Laughing is a wellness tool for me, and so I'm very intentional about it. Whether I am watching replays of Martin Lawrence or going back and watching my favorite episodes of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I assure that I'm intentional about laughter. Coming together with family members on Zoom calls, and once you get a bunch of fans on a Zoom call, you are bound to laugh. Belly aching laughter is a wellness tool for me as well.
Awesome. How about you, Dr. Jones?
Thank you for this. This is giving me joy, these practical tools. I think this will be very, very helpful for people. I try to remind myself and my patients and families to have healing practices. And I love how you say wellness tools. And we know healing practices work for trauma, stress, all types of things. And so I share and try to do these things myself. Self-care, whatever brings you joy. And we've heard different things from everybody. One for me is watching marathon shows that I haven't been able to watch before. And so I'll just sit and watch, especially if my husband's home and I'm like, can you get the kids for a couple hours? I just want to watch this, So movies with the family. Also, I tell people to do mindfulness, anything that works for you, mindfulness strategies, like just taking deep breaths, doing a body scan where you're just breathing in and out slowly, feeling your toes, feeling your knees, feeling your arms, feeling your chest fill with air, to see how your head feels. Very helpful to calm. Yoga, meditation, and prayer. Absolutely, prayer is a healing practice. We cook together. My kids like to cook and get in the kitchen and make a mess. So we'll cook meals together, which is strengthening our relationships with our kids and between me and my spouse. Exercise, of course, getting adequate sleep is so important to heal the body when going through a lot of stress. And relationships, as everyone has said, having that a key buffer, buffering our children, and having someone that has got our back and that we can talk to with no filter and with no shame. So all those things are very important, and I encourage people to identify those things, and I have mine as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I want to encourage you guys who are watching. We did put a link, I guess, below. If you would donate to this cause when it comes to mental health, because not a lot of people are able to afford such, right? They may want to go, but they can't. It might be something as simple as a copay, and they're not able to afford that. So I encourage you to go ahead to donate to this cause. We put a lot of hard work into this, so that way we could give you guys these information as well as these tools, but also you could do something for somebody else, because I'm sure you guys may have a family member who is suffering from mental health. You yourself could be suffering from mental health. So we are all this collectively. We're all in this collectively. So I wanted to encourage you guys to do that. I'm going to go ahead and ask if any of the panelists want to share in regards to things that you guys been doing as well. Let me see who I could pick on. Okay, go ahead, Miss McBean.
Okay, well, I check in with my body and my emotions. So physically, I check in to see how I'm feeling. Am I feeling any tension in my neck? Do I have a headache? Do I feel anything in my back? I do what Dr. Jones called a body scan. So I process and feel my toes in my shoes and see how I'm feeling. Because the thing is, we get so busy because we have so much to do. We have children we have to take care of. We have jobs. We have businesses that we're trying to start if you're out of a job, or supplementing. So I take a scan of my body to see how I'm feeling. And then of my emotions to see, are you hurting about anything? Did people have been trying to be kind to each other, but sometimes you get into an altercation, and then did I carry that over into my next day? And so after that, I practiced Tai Chi. So there's a lot of breathing and stretching and moving. I've been doing yoga for 19 years, and I wanted to try something different. So I started Tai Chi in, I think, December. And that helps too with breathing, meditating, stretching the muscles, and sensing how you're feeling so that you can heal.
Thank you. You wanted to share?
I wanted to follow up again. What do you do? For me, what I find is talking about it. Now, you have to be mindful, though, as you talk. Again, as Pastor Josh mentioned, or Attorney Renisha mentioned, in terms of your circle, they have to know their limitation, understanding how much to give or just to have an ear to listen. For me, talking, and I've vouched for Shelly, I had a few sessions with Shelly as well, helping you identify or label those emotions or those ramblings. Sometimes we talk, but yet we can't make sense of what we're saying. And someone is able to interpret that and say, oh, so this is this, and help you recognize and declutter and basically confront these, not stressors, but confront the cloudiness, if you will, and be able to accept it and acknowledge it, then to move forward. So talking about it works.
Good. So we have a whole bunch of, coping mechanisms that we just provided to you guys, right? Now, hopefully that you found something that one of the panelists said that would assist you and that you could try. I do the talking. I need to try more of the exercise based on what I've heard and what you guys are saying. Maybe I'll do the Tai Chi or something like that, right? But I'm going to go ahead and shift a little bit. I wanted to talk also about just some of the anxieties that we're currently experiencing right now because of the COVID, like the vaccination, for example. Since we have Dr. Jones on, I wanted to give her the opportunity to talk a little bit about that and how could we combat that anxiety that we have regarding the vaccination.
That's a great question. So I'll try to be as quick as possible because this is a wealth of information as well. First, I will say, know the difference between credible information and information that lacks evidence and scientific backing from individuals have done a lot of work to get the degrees that they have, right? So make sure when you are believing something or sharing something that you've done your due diligence to make sure it is credible. And so the first thing I will say is the information about the COVID vaccines that are currently available there is nothing to hide. It's all out there for you. cdc.gov/coronavirus/vaccines, or I think it's vaccine/coronavirus. They have, and then also FDA.gov, the same system there. They have all the information you need that you would ask, frequently asked questions. All of the myths that we're hearing in the streets, they have answered those questions on these websites. So anything that you're hearing, you can go find out. You know, things like this vaccine could change your DNA, get into your body and change who you are and change your DNA. And I guess that's alluding to maybe we turn to zombies, right? Secondly, could it give me COVID-19? What other things have I been hearing? Does it make you infertile? All sorts of things. You know, once the wheel gets turning, we hear some absurdities. So I want to say that it is very reasonable and understandable that we have hesitancy, that we are going to ask questions and be unsure, but I want us to do the work to learn about the vaccines. And then once you know, then you know what to do to set that hesitancy. Excuse me 1 second. I had to tell my son he was way too loud. He was sorry about it. He went upstairs to go game. That's his wellness tool. So I'll just give a couple of things here. Should you get vaccinated? I have received the vaccine, Moderna. My husband has received the vaccine. He's a physician as well. He received the Pfizer vaccine. And so both of us have received it. We're alive and well. It's been over 2 weeks now, and we had no side effects except for a sore arm for about 24, 48 hours. I think mine was a little bit longer soreness. I guess my husband's tougher. I don't know. The second time you get the vaccine, it is expected that you may have some tougher side effects. The body has seen the virus, the spike protein that the vaccine administers before. And so the second booster, you are gonna mount this army that was built. So that's the body doing what it's supposed to do to build that army to fight off COVID-19 should you come in contact with it. And so that could be fever, body aches, headaches, again, soreness at the site. So you feel sick. Most people that I know that have gotten it, doctors, their second dose, it was about 2 or 3 days. That's the max. Most of them just 24 hours. And so when you feel that way, you did not get COVID-19 from the vaccine, because we hear this with the flu shot, right? And people don't understand how this science works. So I just want to clear that up. But I would not recommend this vaccine to you if I had not taken it myself. If I would not give it to my own kids. When it is available for children, I will give it to my children, because it has been shown through all 3 phases of trials to be safe and effective, and the research is still ongoing. After those 2 months, It's not over. They're still continuing to study, track data, collect all the information that you need to make sure that people are doing well with this vaccine. And so just go and read the information. I also have here, when I took my vaccine, I got about 4 or 5 sheets from the hospital, and it gives you the fact sheet for the emergency use authorization for Moderna, and you get one for Pfizer as well. It tells you everything about this vaccine, how it should be administered, the science behind it, how it actually works in your body, what's in the shot. Because there's a lot of myths about what's actually in the shot. But there's no latex, no adjuvants, no preservatives. It's the most simplest vaccine that I've ever seen. It's just the mRNA, the lipid protein that it's wrapped in to get into the cell, some sucrose, some electrolytes, and that's about it. There's not all that extra stuff because they're not multi-dose. And so people have been saying all sorts of things about that, but you can get all that information here. The study information, the demographics of the study participants. Yes, Black people were in this study, and the Moderna vaccine, the scientist who helped to create it is Dr. Kizzy Corbett, and she is a Black woman with the National Institutes of Health. And so we did participate in this one, guys. I know plenty of doctors and nurses who were in the studies. And they did that for us so that we could see we were a part of this process and we did well so that we could be well.
Dr. Candace, let me ask you a quick question. One of the young men I was talking to about this panel discussion, one of the questions he asked me and I couldn't answer it, he was saying that, one, how'd they roll out so quickly with the vaccine? I don't know that process. I mean, I'll defer to you for that one. And additionally, he was asking if this is supposed to be the antidote, if you will. And you mentioned how that membrane goes into the cell, but is there some kind of duplication or I guess the question he wanted to ask, and I'm actually curious myself, like how long does this stay in your body? Is this something that stays in your body for a certain amount of time? Or if you're a healthy person and naturally through some process gets out of your system? Or is this something that's attached to the RNA, like you mentioned, throughout your whole body?
Yes, those are 2 really good questions. And I'm no vaccinologist, but I have done the work to read and understand the studies, and I've heard several presentations from the CDC and Dr. Paul Offit and Dr. Fauci and all of these different scientists who've done this talk. So I'm giving you what they've given me and what I've read. But the quickness, the Operation Warp Speed, as you will, I know scared a lot of people. It's too fast. It's too soon. I still have patients that don't want HPV vaccine because they say it's new, and it's not new. It's been around 10, 15 years, a long time, but they still think it's new. So this in 2 months, that's really new and too fast for a lot of people. But the way I understand how we were able to do this so quickly totally makes sense. Never before have we had the whole world affected by a pandemic in our lifetime, right? And so you have to think about it. Usually when vaccines or medications are made, it's a company. In this situation, the whole world has been working together. Companies, governments, companies coming together across continents and pouring in all their resources together to get this done. That's why. And then all of their efforts, everything put on pause, and everything just going towards this. That is how this was able to be done so quickly. Companies, it take them years to make these vaccines because it's just them, their team with their resources. And this time it's the whole world that was working on it. And so that's the explanation that I understand by the quickness of it. We needed it quick. So we now need to get people to take the vaccine. So secondly, the science behind this. So the messenger RNA is made, right, in the laboratory. It's the science behind it has been in process for over 10 years. They've been working on this technology for over 10 years, and they have already tried it with different illnesses. So this is not new. So that made me feel a little bit better. It wasn't something they just came up with due to COVID. And so it works for COVID because of the way COVID is, right? It has the spike protein that is very identifiable, and it helps to the virus infect you and do its job. And so they were able to make a messenger RNA, which all that is the blueprint. Say blueprint. So the blueprint for the spike protein. That's what this messenger RNA. It is like getting an email. So you get the vaccine, the messenger RNA goes into the muscle cell where you get injected, the muscle cell, so it's specific to that. And the messenger RNA is delivered into the cytoplasm of the cells, and it goes no further than that. Messenger RNA never goes into your DNA. That's how the body's and you can go back to biology and understand how your DNA is made and how things are done, but it doesn't work in the nucleus of the cell where your DNA is. It works out in the cytoplasm, and it connects with ribosomes for that message to be read and the protein, the spike protein, to be made, and then it's delivered to the outside of the cell. So your immune system goes, that's not supposed to be here. That's foreign. And then builds immunity. And then after that message is made and that messenger RNA has done its job, the cell eats it up and gets rid of it.
Gotcha. I may be making this up, and I promise I'll chill. But like with most vaccines, right? And this is me kind of playing devil's advocate, because a lot of people on social media, you hear everything. You hear a gamut. Your family's talking about it. Our kids are talking about it. So just allow me to play devil's advocate for a moment, if you don't mind. So for the distrust, right? The distrust that most people have, and obviously you can't speak politically to this government because you had nothing to do with it. But you have people, especially people of color, who have reservations about taking this vaccine due to things that have happened time and time again. And as a panel, we discussed it leading to this. And I just wonder if you can expound on that as well, just to kind of bring some kind of concrete wisdom as to the genuine threat that COVID-19 has. And for those of us, whether it be up here or out there in TV and Instagram land, what are the long-term ramifications of just kind of upholding that whole distrust piece due to, I think, what was it, Tuskegee we talked about, and a number of other things that historically this country has done to people of color?
Yes. So yes, we all know there has been historical trauma around science and a medical mismanagement of how Black people have been treated. That is absolutely true. The history is there for us, and we all need to know that. In this situation, you said something powerful, that what are the ramifications of upholding this distrust? Because there are ramifications. We know that COVID has disproportionately devastated people of color. And so if we sit back in this distrust and deny ourselves every preventive strategy of preventing COVID, everyone, and vaccine is just one layer of that. If we deny ourselves that and don't do what we're supposed to do, we're going to continue to be devastated. And so if you're not being safe with numbers of people you're around, if you're not washing your hands good, if you're not wearing a mask, if you're not, all the things that we ask the public to do, and if you're not going to take this vaccine, you're not doing everything you need to do to protect yourself. And so that's the ramification. If you're spreading misinformation and you're being a barrier to people to do the right thing for themselves and their families, we are adding to that. And so this distrust is justified, but we have to do what we need to do to move the needle, but not be paralyzed to end up hurting ourselves on the back end. Because this is, when you compare this COVID-19 and this vaccine to Tuskegee and Dr. Sims and HeLa cells and Henrietta Lacks, that's comparing apples and oranges. And we can't get stuck in that.
Thank you so much for that. And I think a lot of what causes mental health issues is confusion and confusion that is exacerbated by fake information, false information, whatever you want to call it. I don't call it Facebook, I call it fake book. So we have to be careful what we accept as truth. And to enhance our emotional intelligence and to enhance our mental health, which is wealth, we have a responsibility to get the truth and to expose ourselves to new information. Breakthrough is always on the other side of something that we do not know. So thank you, doctor, for that. We really appreciate it, guys. We're going to go ahead and break for about, what is it, boss, 5 minutes? We're going to break for 5 minutes, and then we're going to come back and we're going to continue to change the world one life at a time. See you soon.
It's interesting that the things we cherish most are the same things we walk right by. They become so intertwined in the status quo that ultimately it becomes impossible to tell them apart from our day-to-day. That is, impossible until things change. Because as it turns out, that thing we call life, it has a say. There's a saying, you never really know what you have until it's gone. And sometimes it takes the most abrasive of reminders, the harshest of times, to help us recapture that perspective, to lift us up and show us what we had previously failed to see. And while our darkest moments test our strength, they push our boundaries, even transform our reality, they can also be the bridge that leads us exactly where we need to be. They remind us that sometimes it's not about how we spend our time, but who we spend it with. That quiet brings clarity, and the world can spin so fast that we forget to think about our place within it. It reminds us how humanity is bigger than the sum of its parts, and it takes just as much energy to build up as it does to tear down. It reminds us that no matter where we live, what we speak, or who we pray to, we're not so different after all. It reminds us that there is so much more good in this world than evil, so much more love than hate, and so much promise for tomorrow. Someday we'll look back on this moment with the lessons we've learned, the hardships we've faced, and we will be reminded of the miracle that is the human spirit, unwavering in its resolve, unbreakable at its foundation, stronger than we could ever comprehend. See, sometimes it's hard to look around and find a reason to be optimistic, to understand or comprehend why. But what we'll find is that if we look hard enough, immersed in the uncertainty, the disruption, and in some cases, the tragedy, there's something to be gained. A tiny candle flickering in the night that will eventually grow to light our way. Because that road to tomorrow is paved with hope. There are pages unwritten, stories untold, and a new chapter to begin.
This is the A to Z of ideas and ways to help you cope. A is for activity. Be active, move, do more of the things you enjoy. B, breathe. Take deep breaths in and long, slow breaths out. Count to 10, then start again. C is for create. Find creative ways to express yourself. What other ways are there to be creative? D. Distract yourself. If you are in crisis and need to stay safe, try to distract yourself by keeping busy. For example, watch TV, play a game, or read a book. When you feel calmer, you will be more able to tackle the distressing thoughts and feelings. E is for exercise. Get moving. Run around or do some sport, go to the park or playground and have some fun. F. Friends and family. Friends and family are important. Spend time with the people that make you feel happy. G is for goal setting. Break tasks down into small steps. Focus on one at a time. H is for helpline. Call Childline. If you feel you can't speak to a parent or teacher, they will listen and offer you help. I is for ice. Cool down. Have an ice cream or a cold shower to lower your temperature to help keep your body and mind calm. J. Joke. Find something to make you laugh. K. Keep a scrapbook of the places you have been and things you have done. It will remind you of happy times and of your achievements, things to be proud of and feel good about. L. List 3 things you can hear, 3 things you can see, 3 things you can touch. This will help you to focus your mind on the present moment, the here and now. M is for music. Listen to your favourite music. N is for nurture. Look after yourself by making sure you eat and drink. O, organise. Do one thing at a time. Tick things off a list so you can see how much you are getting done. P is for pets. Spend time looking after and playing with an animal. They are great for cuddles. Q, quiet time. Keep things calm and peaceful around you. R, relax. It's important and okay to take a break. How do you like to chill out? S is for support networks. Who's around you that you can lean on for support? Friends, family, teachers, youth clubs, helplines? T, try something new. Try an activity or hobby you haven't done before. You might find something you enjoy and are good at. U, use your talent and strengths. Focus on what you do well and do more of it. This will build your confidence. V is for visualize. Picture your calm or happy place. Maybe you could draw it and put it somewhere to help you focus on other thoughts and images. W, write it down. Keep a diary or blog. Get it out of your mind and onto paper. X is for Xbox. It's okay to have downtime and have fun. Y, you can do it. Positive self-talk can help you believe in yourself. Well done, keep going. Z, sleep on it. Sometimes things feel better when we have a good night's sleep. If you want to find out more, get in touch with Hampshire CAMHS and visit hampshirecams.nhs.uk.
Hello, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for being here. We are talking about mental health and how COVID has been affecting our mental health. We have been talking about coping mechanisms, the things that we are able to do to help us with mental health. We have a slew of panelists here. I have Abby, who is a psychotherapist, Dr. Bonhomme, who is a physical therapist. I have Ms. McBean, who is a teacher as well as a pastor, Ms. Mayweather, who is a lawyer, and Lorvins Eugene, who's from Pillars Cleaning Group, and he's also a child advocate. Myself, Ms. Bell, who is a psychotherapist and who is the owner of Rest Counseling Consulting, and the great Ms. Shelley Fanfan, who is also a psychotherapist. Thank you again for joining us and staying with us, you guys. Don't forget about the link to click for the donation so that way we could raise some kind of funds to help others out there that might not have the opportunity to actually seek counseling. If they're calling us, then we want to be able to not turn anybody down and to try to help as many people as possible. And please do share. Please do share this live with someone else, a family member, a friend. Just let them know that this is some good information that they'll be able to get here. It's been so far, you know, we've been talking about vaccination. We talked about, again, coping mechanisms. We talked about the importance of mental health, the difference of mental health and mental health disorders. We talked about a lot. But now what I want to get into is pretty much how mental health is being affected. How is it affected body, mind, and soul? So I'm going to start with Dr. Bonhomme and ask him, how has technology played a role in the physical effects of your clients, as well as how you see it's been playing effect with them mentally?
Well, we know with technology, as you said, technological diseases has had a lot of positive impact on our society and our culture, both medically, innovation. But at the same time, too, there's a cost to it as well. For example, those of you who work in the office, sitting at the desk, working 8-10 hours, staring at a screen, you may notice over time your posture change. So if I'm sitting upright, then over the years, you develop this hunchback. Your neck start protruding forward. You staring at the screen, the blue light affects your vision as well. Study has shown that as well when we have our kids that are staring at the iPad right before bed, it affects their sleep pattern as well. For those of us who are very technological savvy with the phone, always texting, or using the phone in our ears, some of us are hypersensitive to the magnetic field. So you may develop ringing in the ear and may not realize that or may not connect that to the fact that you're always on your phone. If you have developed trigger finger, depending on stress, you may become tense and you're finding yourself grabbing things so violently, if you will, but yet your fingers start to trigger or catches, but don't realize it's the repetitive motion and tension building up within these muscle groups. But we go to the eyes. Many of you guys probably wearing an Apple Watch. You probably wear glasses, but yet you're squinting to see these letters, these numbers over time, but don't realize your eyes may become dry as well from staring at the screen. Don't realize that that's a correlation from staring at the screen 10, 12 hours. Those of you that transferred from the office to the home, working additional hours but not realizing that dry eyes is a byproduct of staring at the screen. The migraine headaches, the chronic headaches, the tension in the shoulders that develops, but don't realize, again, there's a connection from posturing. Gravity is always gonna win. You're putting yourself forward, but your body, your muscles are working to hold you upright. So there's a battle. But yet, you may develop the symptoms and don't realize it is a byproduct of your environment, of the work that you do. As soon as you begin to identify these issues, then you can begin to resolve the symptoms. And we mentioned this earlier, the body talks to you. So you start developing pains. Now, you may have a headache, you may have neck pain, but don't realize it's muscular, or don't realize it's as a result of a stress, okay? Now, how do we position ourselves to help identify these stressors, but to help properly? I'll use the word diagnose the condition that's causing the symptoms. So technology is good, but at the same time, be mindful that everything we do in moderation. Many of the panelists mentioned that they exercise. So as you at home, make it a mental note that if you're sitting at the computer every 30 minutes or every hour, you get up. If you're doing a presentation, you may want to stand up, adjust your monitor, and do the presentation. So that way, you're avoiding these bad posturing, allow yourself to physically be active, and self-correct the posture by standing. So there's ways to mitigate that, but we have to consciously make the effort to address these changes.
So, in other words, if your body's feeling good, your mind feeling good also?
Should be, should be. But again, now talking about the mind body, right? So your brain, your mind is your motor, your motherboard, if you will. And I said earlier, stress is not a bad thing, but whatever happens here, the body has a way of responding to it. It could be positive, it could be negative. But you as the individual have to be sensitive enough or aware enough or be in tune enough with your body to identify if that's a negative reaction or a positive reaction. And if it's negative, how do you begin to moderate that to change the situation? If it's positive, it's positive. We're going to enjoy it.
Thank you so much for that. I want to acknowledge the people that are watching currently. And I have some questions, but I want to say hello to Stacy. And I think I can't see all of mine. Do you see some of yours?
Let's see. Shay Mayweather, Stacy Lachelle, Ada Hung Long, Nikki French, Danielle Fiquire, I believe. I hope that's right. Diane Papiski. I think I covered everybody who has made comments on there, in addition to all of our other viewers on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you for tuning in.
Okay.
Tuning in.
And we're going to divert a little bit. I have a question from Stacy. She asked, what are some boundaries you can set to protect yourself from getting hurt and to prevent yourself from enabling the people you love? That's a good question. Who want to answer that? Free session, huh?
I would say confrontation. But at the same time, it's setting boundaries. So in terms of activity level, in terms of positioning, if you make it a point, every 30 minutes or every hour, whether you feel like it or not, on that time, you get up and move. So for example, for the neck, let's say you sit up straight, you know what, I feel good anyway, I don't feel tired. You roll your shoulders, you turn your neck, you close your eyes, fixate on different things. Don't wait till that symptom comes on. By the time it comes on, it's already too late. So if you're at a position, you're feeling comfortable, and then 20 minutes later you start feeling achy, you've already reached your max. So learning to understand your tolerance, and before you get to that point, make it a point. Before you get to that target zone, make it a point to do different activities to change the body's position that would help reduce this onset of symptoms.
Thank you for that. For physically, and you're probably going to answer us emotionally?
I was, yeah.
Thank you.
And so know that the word no is a word. Nobody likes the word no. And it's rare for people to be comfortable with saying no. But no is also a part of self-care. If you overextend yourself at a time when you're just not capable, just not ready, you're hurting yourself. So establishing boundaries is vital. It's showing that you care about yourself, you care about your family, just to let them know this is not a good time, I'm unable to do it right now.
I just want to make a comment. I think that a lot of people set boundaries they don't enforce. So with that said, everything that these beautiful people have stated, do it. That's it.
Actually, I talk about that in my book as well. And it's the third step where you make that move. So you acknowledge that this is what's going on. You name the emotion you're feeling overwhelmed. And then you make a move. You say, no, I'm unable. You really just actually have to make yourself do it.
Any words from our psychotherapists? Abby?
I would say that probably being able to manage expectations as well, and knowing your own expectations and your own needs, but being in agreement with the other person, whoever it is that's on the other side. Because if you're not able to meet in the middle, then the boundaries are going to be crossed one way or another. So I think expectation management is a good thing to remember when dealing in relationships.
Don't forget
Thanks,
our
Dad.
virtual. Thank you. I don't want to forget Josh and Dr. Jones. You guys have any comments or anything to add to that?
Sure. I mean, I would say that, you know, a lot of times it's not necessarily that someone, when you do happen to set boundaries, I think it's very important what Venetia say. Sometimes we set boundaries that we don't enforce. What we find on the other side, I find, is that sometimes it's not someone who is intentionally trying to cross your boundaries. They just don't know where you stand on things. And so when you make it clear that maybe if there's a specific time in the day that you're not really taking calls, or that this is for your family, you know, my wife and I, we have 4 kids. So I have to know, just, you know, even with the business or in ministry, there's a certain time that's allotted where it's uninterrupted time with them. Once you kind of make it clear, a lot of times people will respect that. And even if they know that they've crossed their boundaries, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, I completely forgot, you know, and then that kind of helps to also identify those who don't care about your boundaries. And then so, you know, for those individuals that you can only probably deal with them at a certain time or day or whatever the case is. So I think just kind of piggybacking on everything that was said, especially what Arena should say, sometimes it's our fault, for me personally, because I may have the boundaries, but I don't set it. Or what Dr. McBean said is just sometimes you're uncomfortable with saying no. And people are more receptive to no than we think. They just, if you don't say no, they're going to keep coming. So I think it's just being able to enforce those boundaries that you are setting.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And also, if you know you guys are struggling with boundaries, period, what you're able to do is always look for professional help, and they'll actually help you with that, because sometimes we could be stuck where we are and we're not able to process on our own. We're not able to get unstuck on our own. So then therefore we do need that professional help, and that's going right back to, again, that's your mental health. Even as, you know, something as simple as the boundary or anything that has to do with that. But I encourage you guys to definitely, if you feel like you are stuck in any point, then you have to seek help to some degree. If you've tried everything, even what everybody else said here, and you still find yourself that you're having a hard time, you know, getting through that, then get some help so that way they could give you some kind of training on how to do that.
I'm thinking of mental health. Is, you know, just like before when COVID happened, they were talking about not social distancing. They had this bad connotation of the way we were using social distancing.
Stigma?
The stigma. So as it relates to mental health, I guess when people hear mental health, maybe it's confusing. They're like, oh, mental health is just the state of, you know, your well-being. But maybe they're assuming, oh, mental health, they're saying I'm having a mental disease. So as a result, it automatically shuts them out. Is anyone trying to come up with a new version of wording for mental health just to maybe help break that stigma, or at least have it more receptive to the common body?
I think so, yes. I know for myself, I consider it emotional wellness. That's the verbiage that I use. And make sure that I always, you know, equivocate that to wealth. Because when people hear wealth, we want wealth, but we don't understand exactly what that looks like. And so I always use the term emotional wellness, because I think that when we use terms like mental health, or mental illness, people count themselves out. And, you know, and it's important for us to stop doing that and to be able to recognize even things such as not being able to set boundaries. That's an emotional issue, because to be able to set boundaries, that's a manifestation, that's an assertive act. And so individuals who don't have the capacity to be assertive, that's an emotional issue. Your inability to speak before a crowd, that is an emotional issue. Your inability to take your anger from a 10 to a 6, that is an emotional issue. And so I think it kind of broadens the view of things when we use terms like emotional wellness.
And I have did you want to add to that, Abby?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I think that, as you have said, that, you know, the physical well-being is just as important as the emotional well-being. And so looking at it as a whole, all of the being, and that it's not just mental, it's not just physical, that it's all encompassing, and distinguishing between health and well-being and illness.
I just want to add really quickly, I think that COVID has also positioned people to be in a place where they're able to receive the information provided, because a lot of people are seeking help. They're seeking now. Before, they were just doing and going and avoiding. They're seeking. So whatever we coin it now, they are more receptive to receive and define it as provided.
I also have a question here from our audience on live. The question is, how do we promote mental health in our community when it's lowered down upon?
Talking about it. Let's talk about, talking about it. I told you, in my family, that we didn't talk about this stuff. Oh, no. Everything was swept under the rug, and to talk about it, to release. Somebody said, release, it gives you a different perspective that you're not alone. There are resources. Like, this is not just about you. There's potential help, that this is not just the end, but the beginning. So I think talking about it has really helped change I just drew a blank.
The narrative.
The narrative, yes.
And I think, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that in addition to talking about it, then we have to challenge people to take some practical steps after you have talked about it. Right. What are you going to do? See, I'm an aggressive therapist, and I do believe that sometimes motivation will decrease by 50% 24 hours, within 24 hours after a stimulus. So that means, like, moments like this or events like this, we have to challenge people to take steps within the next 12 hours, because in 24 hours, you're going to resume this mindset that you're okay. And you're not okay. If there's something that we said here today that triggered you or made you think, if it made you think, then it's something for you to process a little bit further. So we have to talk about it. We have to challenge people to take practical steps. We have to make sure that those who are in a position to provide the services, that we're doing it in a way that's accessible to all as much as we possibly can. I'm not saying that we should put ourselves out of business. But I'm saying that we also have to take responsibility for making our services as accessible to the people as possible.
So before we move forward then, would you give a nugget to someone who have issues identifying their emotions or labeling a particular feeling they're having, whether it's sadness or angry or maybe just loneliness? Have them be able to put a label on that and identify that, or at least recognize that's what that is.
I would love to jump in there, because as the art therapist, art is a wonderful way to be able to tap into those feelings that you can't necessarily find words for. So, not only engaging in art is therapeutic, but then what comes about, and being able to take a look at what you've created and say, oh, you know what? That's what that is, I couldn't put my words on it, but now I see it, and it takes that intangible thing that might be going on inside of you and gets it out.
And, just to piggyback to what you're saying, with, my clients, it's when they come to therapy, then they recognize, when you help them through, then they recognize the emotion. As far as for them, recognize it by themselves, it's kind of, sometimes it could be hard. It could be hard to identify what that is. But that's why I think it's important, that you go and get the help that you need, so that way you're able to identify what's there. So that way you bring it to the surface. Whatever that was in the root, you bring it to the surface so you could deal with it. Because a lot of time when you have certain things that you're not dealing with, you're ruminating. That means you're thinking over and over and over again. When you're thinking all the time, then therefore you become stressed. Then if you're stressed, the body is stressed, right? The mind is stressed. So you become foggy. You're not able to do certain things that you would like to do. So that's why it's important that you go and get the help that you need. Not just talk about it, right? To people that probably are not professionals that could help you. You want to go to someone who's a professional that could help you bring that emotion up so you can deal with it, so you could be your best self.
I just want to say really quickly, so this is the beginning of the year. I know a lot of people are scheduling wellness checks. How about I charge you to do a mental wellness check as well? go ahead and schedule that.
Thank you. I wanted to say something to what Dr. Bonhomme was saying in terms of like, how do you put a name to it? How do you identify it, right? And just as what was just said is so important, that sometimes we're not able to put a name to what it is we're feeling. A lot of the reason why people deal with anger management issues is that they're not able to communicate. They're not able to take their emotions and formulate them into words, and so the skill deficit is communication. Our behavioral issues and our maladaptive patterns can always be connected to some type of skill deficit, right? And so it's important to get the help that you need to put a word to it. The other day I was on a Clubhouse conversation and somebody came on and said, I'm just so tired of people telling me that I'm in a season and God is strengthening me and this is why I'm consistently persecuted. I said, well, tell me a little bit about these challenges that people are telling you are heaven sent. And she's like, well, you know, my family, they don't support me. My friends don't. I'm in relationships. The men don't respect me. So she's talking about this pattern of being around toxic individuals for the past 5 to 7 years, not acknowledging or recognizing that the common denominator is you. What you're talking about when you're saying that you're consistently exposed to toxic environments is that you're living a life that attracts that. And so there's this idea of congruence, which means that whatever's on the inside of you, that you will cause your external environment to match up with that. So if you don't believe that you're beautiful, then you are going to align yourself with men that will affirm that you're not beautiful. So we have to teach people how to break those thought patterns, and we can't do that on our own. I can't counsel myself.
That's
I'm in
right.
my blind spot. Most of us are in your own blind spot.
That's
so
right.
get the help that you need. And you deserve that. You deserve that. A lot of the times, the enemy that people are preaching about is your inner me. And so we have to learn how to get out of our way, and you do that through therapy. You break thought patterns, you break behavioral patterns so that you can achieve the best version of yourselves.
All right. Very well said. I want to read some of the comments that we have here. Marsha, great terminology about the mental wellness. That does clarify so much. Mental makes you seem like something is wrong with you. Someone else said, in the island community, mental health is perceived as a taboo. What are some strategies that one can use to encourage the island community to seek help? Who's from the island?
I'm from the islands, and not only from the island, but from the Christian community, where it seems taboo because not a lot of conversation is being had around the pulpit with this. So double whammy for me. But I have my own therapist, and it's there that I get a lot of tools and strategies that help me be a better mother. I'll give you an example. My youngest, he used to give me a call, or the clinic would let me know your son is not feeling well. Okay, so he'd call me, Mommy, can you come get me? I'm not feeling well. I'd drop everything to go get him. And after a while, I'm like, I can't do this. You're going to suck it up because you're fine. And then the clinic called me, so I had to go and get him. And then after a while, I recognized that he was coming to me on a Thursday in the afternoon. So then I started wondering what is going on a Thursday in the afternoon. So I picked him up. I'm like, what's up? How was your day? And I'm listening to him tell me about his day. To make a very long story short, when I got to the bottom of it, there's something that happens every other Thursday at school that was making him feel as if he was sick. So he's feeling sick, and he's telling me he's not feeling well, but it was psychosomatic. He was fine. But how can I let him know he's fine? So I got to the point where I'd find out, just using the same strategies I learned to handle my own issues and my own thoughts of I'm not feeling well when I am fine, to get to the bottom of what his emotional state was on that particular Thursday. And the word was anger. Mommy, I'm angry. This is like somebody's in the class and they're saying something about him to others, and he's hearing it and he's saying, I'm not that. So he was angry, and he didn't know how to handle his anger, and he was feeling sick. He was having a headache. He felt like he couldn't breathe. It's almost like a little panic attack. And so I had to help him recognize that when you're feeling sick, you're feeling as if something's wrong, know that you're feeling angry. So let's deal with that emotion. What are you going to do about it? So he got into telling me that he is embarrassed, and we got to talking to the guidance counselor about this particular situation that was happening. And now I don't have any calls on Thursdays. What am I saying? I learned that strategy because my therapist took me through that. For a long time, I thought I had an earache. I went to the doctor. I said, I have an ear infection. Do you hear me, Dr. Jones? I told my doctor what was wrong with me. I have an ear infection. And he said, you don't. He's looking, he's probing, and he's checking. And I'm thinking, but my ear hurts. Then I'm thinking, maybe I have a cavity. So I'm going to the dentist. And there was no cavity. Now, what's happening here? And that's why in my situation, I'm always doing the body scans to feel what's going on so I can deal with that situation. So islanders, church people who are islanders, believe me when I tell you, there is a breakthrough when you seek the help that you need.
That's so good. You know, I am second generation Haitian American, and confronting your elders in our community warrants something called a calotte. That's a smack in your face. And so it's very difficult sometimes to confront. And God only exposes when he intends to heal. A lot of our healing process starts with being exposed. And so being able to confront in a very loving way has to be key. We have to be very strategic about how we do that. And so one of the things that I always recommend is make sure that you are someone that the person can receive from. Because if you're selecting people that do not have that relationship or that alliance with someone, then already you're behind the, you know, it becomes more challenging. And so really assessing whether I'm the best person to deliver this. And we always want to avoid diagnosing. We don't want to say you're depressed or you're anxious or you're suicidal. I think it's important to say what you see. You used to play tennis, you don't play tennis anymore. You wake up at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you stay in your pajamas all day. You see the difference? Say what you see, and then offer assistance to get the person the help that they need. You can offer to go with them. You can say that these are some of the things that can help you break through. And when you know the person's goals, that's also a very powerful thing. When you know what a person is trying to achieve, you could link the help to access to that thing that they want. And so if it's someone that really values wealth or financial freedom, or they want to elevate in their career, by making sure that you're connecting the help that's available to how they can achieve that thing or those things is important. Like if someone who values marriage, you can let them know, this is what it is I see. And if you want to have this happy marriage that you talk about all the time, I think that there's help for that. You don't have to call it counseling. Just say that there's help for that. I know individuals that can help talk to you to help you with the way that you respond to your husband or the way that you respond to your wife. So I think it's just important to make sure that you're in the right position to deliver the message, say what it is you see, offer the assistance, provide resources, and also provide your own individual support to help the person walk through those necessary steps to get well.
And I think also you lead by example. If you really do, you lead by example. I have many of my clients, they would come in, they're like, you know what, this person could need this too, because then they realize the benefit, you know, that not mental health, but the benefit that therapy has served them. So then therefore they would share, say, hey, you know what, this has really helped me. Like, I was really struggling with this, and this person really helped me. I think, you know, this probably be something that you could do too, or, you know, it's not as bad, because I think when people think about mental health, they automatically have their defense mechanism up. They automatically feel like, oh my gosh, no. They automatically probably think that, oh my gosh, something is wrong with me, or, you know, again, going back to those stigmas. But when you don't know something, then it's harder for you to actually try to go experience it, right? But when you go for yourself and you see for yourself, like, oh, this is not as bad as I thought. Or, oh, I don't really have a mental health disorder, because not every client that come to us, we diagnose to say they have a mental health disorder. It could be something simple as trying to help them or giving them the tools that they need in order for them to remain healthy mentally. Okay, so I want you guys to know that, you know, just really be that example. When it comes to the, I guess, the African American community or the Caribbean community, where it is a taboo when it comes to mental health, but it's educating yourself about it and actually letting them know, hey, this is what it is. Sometimes people are afraid because they just don't know. They look at it as a threat instead of that helping them, okay? So I want you guys to know that. I wanted to read another comment here. I'm stuck by the thought of how valuable this discussion could be all over the country right now. Getting everyone involved in getting vaccinating, preparing the aftermath of the pandemic. Hold on, survivor guilt, loss of education. Sometimes has a stronghold. Yeah, absolutely, it does. What else? Okay, and I think you had answered this question already. What's the best way to tell a loved one that they need help? And so if you guys have any other questions that you want to throw our way, please do so. In the meantime, anybody else here want to talk about, we talked about the body, we talked about the mind, right? But also there's probably some people in the audience that probably would want to know about, I guess, the spiritual aspect of it. When it comes to your mind being well, it has to be, the body has to be well, as I believe the spirit has to also be intact, and it has to be well. So it's a three-part, right? It's not just a one thing to say, okay, I'm good mentally and everything else work out. But if you are physically sick in your bed and you're not able to get up, and then you could start feeling really down. You could start feeling really sad, or whatever the case might have you. And then, of course, it prolongs. Then you get to the place of depression, right? So the body plays an important role just as much. So it's the same way with the spirit. If you are not able to connect to maybe to a higher power, you're not able to connect to what makes you feel fulfilled, or what makes you feel like you have a purpose, then therefore you could get then depressed about that. You see how it affects each other. So I want someone here in the panel, or even Pastor Josh, or anyone who wants to really talk about this. How do you think the spirit, when it comes to, how does it affect, I guess, the mental health portion of it, or your mental well-being? Pastor Josh, maybe? So, okay.
Well, I look like Lawrence was getting ready to say something.
I definitely was, but she put you in front of the line, so I defer to you, Pastor.
Well, I mean, I know that, as we're, normally we break ourselves down. We are a spirit, soul, and body. We are a spirit, we have a soul, and we live in a body. And, the soul consists of our mind, our will, and our emotions. And I feel like, in my case, or in case people I speak with, if we're not in check with what's, who's in the driver's seat, oftentimes our emotions, have no problem taking the driver's seat. And then, once your emotions are driving, it's going to be a bumpy ride. And so for me, I felt like I had to really check to see what is the driving force behind my thoughts, what's the driving force behind how I respond to things. When I was the most stressed to the point where I became anxious, it was me trying to be in control of my life. And so it's me worrying myself into crisis, worrying about this, worrying about that. And I know that was for me. After my experience, I had to understand that there's certain things that we can check, to know who is driving. How stressed am I? Am I sleeping at night, or if I'm sleeping but not resting? Because the same thoughts I'm wrestling with in the day, in the night, we're wrestling as well. You wake up tired. How stressed you are, and so I had to come to the grips, and I knew this already, but I was reminded that there's only one God and I'm not him. And so I had to learn how to, there was a serenity prayer that I read that really helped me. It says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I can change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so just being able to pray and connect with God, that really helped me to be grounded in those moments. And it's not always where, when you're going through that you can just open your Bible and read or pray. Sometimes, there's a scripture that says iron sharpens iron as a friend strengthens a friend. And sometimes just being able to call somebody and say, listen, this is what I'm going through. Can you pray with me? And sometimes that person can pray, and it's like they're praying from your heart to God's ears. And so I have to just remind myself and check myself to see what is driving what's going on in my life. Am I trying to be in control of everything? I felt like my breakthrough came through me just not concentrating on the things that I can't do, but being consistent in the things that I can do. And that really helped me to just continue to connect with God. So for me, just being spiritually grounded in prayer, having someone pray with you, talking to a loved one, a brother or sister, and just kind of being able to be open with what's going on, that really helps. So I believe the spiritual aspect of things really does help in being able to overcome some of these challenges, especially the ones that are when you feel like you're battling for your mind. I think Shelby said it, and I think she said it very well. It's just, what is this emotion that I'm dealing with? And, learning and about this emotion, this thing that is impacting me. And then I feel like the more we begin to learn about it, the better we can pray about it. And so I think it's all connected, and definitely the spirit aspect of things does help, getting through these different crises.
And Josh, I would love for you to talk about something we talked about on our original call, how mental health, addressing your mental health, seeing a therapist, doing everything you need to do in that area, and being a Christian or being spiritual and believing and having faith can coexist together and should coexist together. And I think that's what a lot of our grandmothers and great-grandmothers and some of our older family members and need to understand that connection.
Absolutely. I believe that there is callings that each one of us we walk in, and each calling is necessary. For example, you coming on and talking about the vaccine, just looking at some of the comments, that was such a wealth of information that you've provided. And I think one of the things we kind of talked about before is just even when it came to the vaccine, there may be some who could be a little bit radical and say, I'm not doing anything. God's got me. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to take this precaution. I'm not going to wear a mask. And it's like, oh my goodness. Well, it's almost like people are trying to separate science and God. And I think you can't. Science proves that there's a God. The Bible describes him to be omniscient, which is broken down to be omniscience. He's all knowing. And so I feel like, yes, we have our faith, but one of the panelists said it, they referred to it, but we also have our works. So there's things that we have to do. There's a practical side of faith. It's not just sitting back and say, okay, God's got me. I don't need to talk to nobody. I don't need to seek help. God's gonna take me through this. But there's practical side of things that we need to do to exercise our faith. Faith without works is dead. So it does coincide. It takes faith to reach out to somebody and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. I need some help. And it's more so we think we have faith by sitting down and not saying anything, but it's really fear that's immobilizing us.
That's right.
And so it takes faith to reach out to get help. And yes, faith, you have faith in God, which is, that's your foundation. But there's a part we play in it too. And sometimes just reaching out is a step of faith.
I always say I trust God. He's number one.
Mm-hmm.
But I also believe in science, and I believe God provides the science.
That's
Mm-hmm.
right.
Absolutely.
Yes, our faith in God grounds us. It is the Bible that we stand on and his word that guides and tells us this is the way, walk in it. When we turn our focus away from the problem and look towards God, who is the healer and who sends help, then we know the way to go. When Saul in the Bible was struck with emotional disturbance, he sent for David to play on the harp so he could soothe how he was feeling. Well, as Christians and people of faith, and we turn to God, he tells us what to do. There's a YouTube link. It's called Soaking Worship. It just has music, just instrumentals. So we can listen to music. We can listen to hymns. The Bible tells us to make melody to our heart and to sing spiritual hymns. We also have community. Our God is Trinity, and community is important to him. So we find ways to connect in the Word of God, touch base with other people at our church. We have different cell groups, and we get together to discuss the scriptures and read the same scripture together over a calendar of maybe a week, 2 weeks. So God will give direction at a time when lots of people are not able to go into the sanctuary anymore. Several churches, and mine especially, we go and visit those who are not able to come out. We go into their homes. For sometimes we sit on their porches and we talk. God wants us to be whole and well. When we turn to him in that battle that we're going on with the spirit, the natural, he gives direction once you trust him.
Awesome. I think, Lorvin, did you?
I think I couldn't have said it any better. I think a combination of everything what everyone said, I think you guys stole the words right out of my mouth. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I also want to say that I believe that God if he wanted us to be alone, if he wanted to take care of everything for us, then he would have just created one person, because he would have do it for that just one person. But that's not what he wanted. He put all of us here together. We have different gifts, different talents, right? Different discipline, so that we could go to each other for that, because he loves, I would say, family, right? And then so if we are a family, then we could go to each other and talk about, hey, this is what's going on. If I need help with law, I'm not going to say, hey, God, there is this thing that's happening. Not that, I don't believe that he will be able to help. Of course, he'll give me direction. But if he's giving you direction to go seek help, go seek the help, right? So I want you to understand that it is okay, again, not to be okay. It's okay for you to seek what it is that you need. If you're hungry, I'm sure you're going to go to McDonald's, wherever you go, and get some food, right? If you need someone to help you with law or some litigation, you're going to go to a lawyer. If you need a doctor, you're going to go to a doctor. So it's the same thing. If you need help when it comes to, learning how to keep your mind intact so it doesn't get to a disorder, then you go to a therapist, right, to get that help that you need. But this is so good, what we've been talking about. I want to also read. I guess people are commenting, they're agreeing, they're saying amen, they're saying, God has given us wisdom, well said, Pastor Josh. And there is one person who says something here. They said, this is the first time I've heard someone connect spiritually with physical and mental health. And that's the truth, because most of the time when we say mental health, we just think of, you know, the cognitive portion of it or the science behind that, and not necessarily all the other aspect, which is body and spirit as well. I like to say your mind is in the middle, your body, and then you have your mind, and then you have, you know, of course, the spirit. And the person also asked, why is God prayer the first response from people when you're in the process of deciding to get help? And then they said, it is your job, is it your job to educate them even when you're in the process of getting educated yourself? Who would like to answer that one?
I'd like to talk. Go ahead.
If I may.
You go ahead.
I remember there was a church that I used to attend some years ago, and I think someone had like a similar question. You know, how come whenever I need help or I'm speaking on something, somebody says, "Hey, what church do you go to? Have you sought out God?" And a lot of times I think people get caught up in like what you're going through. They don't always have that response. But I just wonder from Pastor Josh, is there a better way to approach something? Is there a better way to approach something like that when someone's having an issue, instead of us kind of throwing the Bible at them, where, you know, people of faith are called Bible thumpers, right? How do we avoid that, right? That's one question. And for you, Ms. Fan, if you would, you mentioned something earlier about when sometimes you're not the best person to speak to someone about something they're going through in terms of mental health. So I'll throw my dad out there, all right? So my dad's Haitian to the bone, you hear me? You can't tell him anything. So we had a disagreement about politics. We had a disagreement about his health. And, you know, politics is subjective, right, based on you. But his health, his doctors called me and they emailed me. So I'm his, what do you call it? There you go. So I'm telling him about his health, and my dad, need to do a better job at checking your sugar and so on and so forth. No, God's got me, right? And so how do you, like, what's the best way to address something like that when you have somebody, obviously, whom I care about and I love very much? How do you, look, if I'm getting the news and I know about his health, right, how do I speak to him to avoid that whole, I know God's got you, but he put a doctor in place for a reason. Like, how do I say that? How do you set that up without it being me, in essence? Because I think if it's me, it's going to be watered down, I think. You know what I mean? Because I don't have that medical background. So the both of you can jump in there if you could. I think I can.
Shelby, want to go first?
I think he directed the question to you first, so go ahead.
Yeah, the original question was for Josh.
Sure. I believe the first question was just, you know, the whole Bible thumping and just, you know, deferring someone. Have you sought God? I think the difference is making sure when we're listening to understand and not listening to respond. You know, and sometimes it's just listening to understand. I think, you know, Shelby made a very good example about it when she asked the person in the club, you know, well, tell me some of the things that you're going through. So, you know, sometimes it's just a person who wants to be heard. Sometimes by speaking to you, they're really checking themselves to see, am I on the right track? And a lot of times it's just really being transparent. They can speak to you about something they're going through. Perhaps you've gone through something similar, and you can talk to them on a practical basis. And then after that, you know, you can pray with them. You know, so it's sometimes if you can just immediately defer to, you know, something else, or have you sought God or whatever, you know, they're walking away with the same issue that they came to you with. And it was, you didn't hear them out. They felt like they didn't get a chance to speak what's going on inside. And I feel like if you just give them a chance to speak and listen. And then not being afraid to say, you know what, this is something I'm not too familiar with, and then being able to refer them at that point. But sometimes there could be some sort of similar situations that the both of you have been through. And that was probably the reason how they ended up speaking to you in the first place. So in regards to that question, I think it's for me is listening to understand versus just listening to respond, and allowing someone to explain what's going on inside, and then take it from there. So that's just kind of on that question you had. And I think there was a second question I defer to Shelby.
That's good stuff. Thank you.
Sometimes the people that are closest to us, because they're so close to us, it kind of disqualifies them to be a powerful messenger. And so, and it's not, I mean, it's sad that it's that way, but it is. And so, again, you have to kind of take inventory of how your father receives. And so, I have been trying so hard, because my father is in the same boat, right? He has Parkinson's disease. He had brain surgery on one side of his brain to cover the tremors on one side, but the plan was 6 months after recovery, he was supposed to go back and do the other side. And since that time, he has adamantly refused, and we have seen a decline on only 50% of his body, which makes it even worse. So he has one side of his body that's full emotional and tremors are controlled, but on the other side, he still has significant tremors. And one of the things that I've tried to do is to be very patient and to be very consistent with where we stand as a family, and to use the facts. Every time he goes to see his doctor, who there's familiarity there as well, because it's been years, is to assure that they're consistently presenting that as an option, consistently presenting the information. But at the end of the day, the decision is his. And I have, as a loved one, I have had to go before God and accept the decision that he has made, although it's not what I want for his life. We continue to be there. We continue to do what we can. We have those courageous conversations. My father has heightened sensitivity to our children. And so we have even thought about having the grandkids sit with him to let them know how much they love him, need him. And so they can talk about putting that, we need you. We want you to be around. My son always says, since my son was about 5 or 6 years old, it's been a little bit scary. He has told me at 5 or 6 he's going to have kids starting early. He told me that at 5, that he's going to start early because he wants my father to see his kids. And so, again, what do you think would kind of pull the heartstrings of your father and to use that? So one of the things that I spoke to Dr. B about this, is that we are trying to get my father to agree to see him. This is another Haitian man who speaks the language, and he's a professional, and my father has high value for education. And so again, really think about, how does your dad receive? Like, we have talked about my dad's depression, which is exacerbated by the Parkinson's, and I've thought about this. What would get my dad to sit and really listen? My father loves women. And a beautiful woman that speaks his language, I'm sure he'll open up to her. So we're really thinking about that, like getting a Haitian, a Creole-speaking therapist that can come in and really process with him, because my dad will say all day that he's okay, but we know that he is not. He is, he went from being a completely independent man to being completely reliant on my mom. He's recently stopped driving. There's been so much loss. And so again, it's all about really assessing what is the best way for him to receive the information. And when you do that, then you let it go, because God gave him free will, the same free will that he gave you. It's hard to accept that when we see that it's not what we would do for our loved one. Now, I will say, if the behaviors are putting him at imminent risk and it's a result of him not being competent enough to make those decisions, then that's a whole different discussion. That is when you have to really go in there, and I think you already said you have power of attorney. You start making those decisions, those difficult decisions about his health that he can't make for himself. But if he's not gotten to that point, you just have to continue to be consistent with where you stand, provide the new information, really seek out different messengers that can speak the same message and echo what it is you're saying to him.
Thank you. He's competent, just Haitian. That's a whole different beast. No, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Not sure if you can put that in the same sentence. Haitian and competent, I don't know.
Lawrence, how does he react to facts?
It depends on who's delivering. To your point, there are some ladies that I don't want to say where the clinic is, but he responds very well to them. In fact, he takes a little longer getting ready when I'm taking him to receive that message. But once we get in the car, hey, get me a cola, give me a hamburger. Like, why am I getting this? We just left the clinic, and you said that you're doing all these different things, and from the ladies, and now it's this. But I think I'm gonna try something a little similar. I think sometimes the message, you see this even in relationships. If you had a spouse that was going through something, you say, hey, this whatever ideation, or you're like, you have anger issues. She's not, or he's not going to receive that from you because there's a comfort level there. You said it best. I think some people like they defer to a professional, somebody outside of that space, somebody who they're less comfortable with. They're more likely to receive that as opposed to somebody they're comfortable with. So it's just a revolving door thing.
It's amazing going out of that comfort circle, and this is why it's important for us to really assess our social circles, because if you have comfort in your circle, then you won't grow. There's no change can't happen in comfort, and so if you're the smartest person in your group, that's an issue, but we'll get there. We'll assess that in a little bit. But that outside of comfort is so huge. There was a day when my dad fell and could not get up, so my mom called and asked us to rush over to the house. Now we're talking about 11:15, 11:20 in the evening. We rush over there, and my dad's on the floor. We're trying to get him up, trying to get him up, trying to get him up. Now, one of the things I didn't know, but on our way there, my mom did the Haitian panic thing and called like every Haitian in the community. So while we're trying to get my dad up, people start coming to the house. Like his boys, he's a Mason, they start coming to the house. My father popped up, like literally just got up. We had been trying to get him up for forever. And one of the things that Dr. B said was, we have to get him using the muscles that are underutilized, that they're there. And so it was so amazing. There was something about hearing like his boys coming in that his pride just rose up and he just jumped up. We pulled every muscle in our back out. And it's just like each and every one of us. We have the muscle. You could leave that man. You could break out of that toxic relationship. We all have underutilized muscles that we need to really, engage to break through. But again, maybe coming outside of that comfort zone a little bit, getting the family all together to share how they feel and how much they love him. All of those things are things that you can consider in trying to get him to move in the direction that's the healthiest for him.
Well, thank you so much for that. I know this has been such a great, conversation and topic as well. We have a few minutes. I want to make sure that I'm letting the people that are watching us live to please make sure that you are making sure that you're donating anything that you can to this cause, as well as I want to thank everybody who, took their time out to come here so they could pour into your life. If this helped you in any way, I would like to see some thumbs up. I'm sure the panel was amazing. Thank you for such informative discussion. I see a whole bunch of thumbs up. And yeah, it's going. Okay, that's awesome. I'm happy to know that, we put this together for the purpose to get you guys information and to break the stigma from mental health, right? It is important that you are healthy body. It's important that you are a healthy mind. And it's important that you also healthy spirit, okay? All three of them are very important. Not one is more important than the other. And I want you guys to understand that. I want the panelists to just go around and just let everyone here that's watching live how to get in touch with you guys, if you guys would. I would start with Lorvins Eugene, and just, again, let them know, hey, this is what I do, this is how you get in touch with me if needed, and so forth.
Hi again, I'm Lorvins Eugene.
Mike.
Hi again, I'm Lorvins Eugene. You can reach me via Instagram at ilorvins, so it's ILORVINS, and also on Facebook as Lorvins Eugene. We are currently hiring. Don't rush us with the applications, but we have been growing. That's something that Dr. B and I spoke about just over the last few months, as well as Ms. Bell. With COVID, not everybody took an L, and nobody's like winning, right? But I think this is really good that we have a platform to speak about what we do, and it's a ton of young people that reach out to me for jobs, a ton of young people who are getting what is it, the stimulus. I'd encourage everybody, that idea that you've been sitting on for I don't know how long, use that $600 or $400, whatever it is, use that, add it towards your dream, because nobody's going to pay you like you. That's one thing I really instilled in some of the youth that I deal with and some of the ones I have the pleasure of mentoring. Stop waiting for somebody to hire you, because when outside fully opens up, you can still get fired. You can't leave that with the kids. So you can reach me on any platform, actually just IG and Facebook.
Thank you.
Hello, Attorney Mayweather speaking. You can reach me at Mayweather Law on Instagram and Facebook, or you can call 407-476-8529, and I will gladly answer your call.
Tiffany McBean, author of It's a New Season, How to Handle Life's Changes. If you're ever struggling with anything and you're trying to figure out that starting place, you can find that book on Amazon.
Dr. B, you biomechanic. Reach us at 321-369-9133. Physical therapist, and what I encourage you to do is, you may not be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but if you keep moving, if you keep pacing, eventually you'll become aligned. You'll align yourself with your purpose. So do not stay stagnant. Keep moving.
Hi, I'm Abby Foster with Rest Counseling and Consulting. I am an art therapist, and I do individual work, but I'm also hoping to be able to start some groups very soon. So keep an eye out for those. You can find us at restcnc.com, 407-476-7435. Finally remembered it. It's only taken me a couple months. So yeah, if you're interested in not just art therapy, I definitely do talk therapy, other modalities, but if you're interested in trying to use some of that creative side to tap into some of the things that you might be trying to work through, then give us a call.
And since I am with Rest Counsel Consulting, you guys already know. And since she already gave you guys the number, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Shelly and let her tell you guys. Huh? I will also.
My name is Shelly Fan, and I am, again, CEO and owner of Ask Shelly Consulting. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn at Ask Shelly, spelled SCHELLIE. You can email info@askshelly.com for anyone who wants a consultation. And if you're interested in breakthrough directly with me as your partner, then you can do so by emailing, again, info@askshelly.com.
Awesome. And Pastor Josh?
Hey everyone, again, Pastor Josh. So I'm pastor in South Florida, so if you're in the area, please feel free to reach out. And my wife and I, we also have a relationship and life coaching business. And so we partner with individuals to help them in relationships, also in just pursuing your individual pursuit of things that you want to do, according to what Lawrence just said. She's going after your dreams. So sometimes the extra push and motivation, it helps you, as we spoke about, get out of your comfort zone. So our website is JS Fakir, J like Josh, S, my wife's name is Sue Ann, and then the last name is spelled F as in Frank, E as in Edward, QUIERE. So Jay's Fakir, and then on there you can connect with us on social media, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram.
Dr. Jones?
Well, I'm Dr. Candace Jones, pediatrician here in Orlando. The practice is Edgewater Pediatrics, and I have really enjoyed the conversation tonight. I hope everyone got a lot of great information. I found it to be very informative. You can find me, please visit my website, drcandicemd.com, drcandicemd.com. If you need to reach out to me, info@drcandicemd.com. And listen to my podcast, Kidding Around with Dr. Candace. That's KIDING, so Kidding Around with Dr. Candace. Anywhere you can listen to podcasts, and you can find me on social media at Dr. Candace MD.
Okay. Awesome, possum. Thank you guys so much. I want to thank all the panelists. I want to thank everybody who worked behind the scene just to make this possible for you guys. Again, please, please, please make sure that you're donating for this cause. If you guys, we will actually have a resource link for you guys to click on, so you'll have everybody information there. One person said, thank you for giving me more tools for my mental health as I deal with COVID and the homeless. Okay, so continue doing what you guys do. You guys rock, you're awesome, and remember that your mental health is very important, and break those stigmas and be the first to go out there and do what you have to do so you could be healthy, because if you're not healthy, it affects everybody else. If I'm not healthy, it'll affect everybody else. So know that whoever that's in your circle, you want to make sure you're good so everybody else is good. And if you're good, then you could spread that love, you could spread the knowledge, you could spread a piece of you to that person so they could also go try to be healthy. So like kind of pay it forward with yourself, okay? Do you want to say anything, Shelly, as we wrap up?
Just as a follow-up, as an action step to take, I challenge each person within the sound of my voice to ask 5 trusted individuals this question: do you believe I am well? Wow. Ask 5 trusted people that question: do you believe I am well? And I want you to really take note of the response that you get and act on it if those responses suggest that you need extra support.
That is very good. So I'm going to ask 5 people right now. See, I'm leading by example, okay? And I also, before I end this, I also want to thank my beloved husband, Taman, for assisting me with all this, my daughter, and everybody else who's in the team, as well as Fresh Anointing Church, who allow us to be here and to have this space so we could bring this forward to you guys. I really appreciate it. And then, of course, in July, we'll probably try to do something like this again. Hopefully, it's a little bit different where, I don't know if things will be changing, but we'll see then, okay? I was going to say something else. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Do you believe that I am well?
So you're paying for my dinner. So yes. I do believe you're well. I do.
If I wasn't well, would you tell me?
I absolutely would. You know I would.
Thank you.
I texted to you. I wouldn't tell you.
So I started off with my one person. I guess I have 4 more to go, and I'll do that another time. Thank you guys so much for joining in. I really appreciate it. And you guys remember that God loves you, and take care of yourself.
Gila.